Imagine if I told you that everything you think you know about being a woman or being a man is completely wrong. That every pink dress, every football jersey, every boys don't cry, and every girls should be quiet, it's all made up, constructed, invented by someone else for someone else's benefit. Today, I want to share with you the most dangerous idea of the 20th century. An idea so powerful, so threatening to the status quo, that even today, 75 years later, it still makes people squirm in their seats. This idea came from a woman who walked the streets of Paris with the confidence of someone who had discovered the secret to human freedom. Her name was Simone de Beauvoir, and she said something that changed everything. One is not born, but rather becomes a woman. But here's what she really meant, and why it matters more today than ever before. Let me tell you about Simone. Born in 1908 into a wealthy Parisian family, she seemed destined for the typical life of an upper-class French girl. Her father was a respected lawyer. Her mother was a devout Catholic with all the right connections. Little Simone was supposed to grow up, marry well, and disappear into domestic bliss. But life had other plans. When Simone was just 11 years old, her grandfather was arrested for fraud. The family bank collapsed overnight. Suddenly, the de Beauvoir went from luxury to struggle. No more fancy apartment, no more servants, no more money for the one thing that mattered most in their social circle, a dowry. One day, Simone's father stood before his two daughters and delivered what most girls of that era would have considered devastating news. You will not marry. You have no dowry. You will have to work. But here's the beautiful irony. Those words that were meant to be a condemnation became Simone's liberation. While other girls saw work as punishment, she saw it as possibility. While they saw marriage as security, she saw it as a cage. At 21, she became the youngest person ever to pass the philosophy teaching exam in France. She moved out of her parents' house, rented a tiny room, and discovered something revolutionary: freedom. Then came 1939. The Nazis occupied Paris. Friends died, disappeared, or fled. In the midst of that darkness, something extraordinary happened. Simone finally understood how fragile life really was. If she was going to be a writer, her secret dream since childhood, she couldn't wait for the perfect moment. She had to write now. In 1943, with German soldiers patrolling her streets, she published her first novel. It was a success. But that was just the beginning. What came next would shake the foundations of how we think about gender, identity, and human nature itself. To understand Simone's revolutionary ideas, you need to understand her philosophy: Existentialism. It starts with one simple, terrifying, liberating idea: we are born without purpose. No God sent you here with a mission. No cosmic plan determines your fate. You are thrown into existence, and then, here's the beautiful part: you get to decide what to do with it. Think about that for a moment. You have the freedom to create your own purpose. You don't have to live according to what religion tells you, what corporations sell you, or what society expects from you. You can choose. But, and this is crucial, freedom comes with a price. That price is anxiety. Because when there's no manual for how to live, you have to write your own. When there's no authority telling you who to be, you have to figure it out yourself. Most people run from this freedom. It's easier to follow the rules, wear the uniform, play the part. But Simone said, "Wake up. Your freedom is your responsibility." Now, here's where it gets interesting. Simone knew that our freedom isn't unlimited. We don't choose when we're born, where we're born, what color our skin is, or whether we're born with male or female anatomy. She called these unchangeable facts facticity. But here's the key, and listen carefully because this is where her most dangerous idea begins. Facticity is just the raw material. What matters is how we interpret it, how we respond to it, how we choose to live with it. In 1949, Simone de Beauvoir wrote 8 words that would change history. One is not born, but rather becomes a woman. With that single sentence, she detonated a bomb under centuries of assumptions about gender, nature, and human identity. What did she mean? She meant that when a baby girl is born, she's not born a woman. She's born female. What makes her a woman is everything that happens after that moment. The pink blanket, the dolls instead of trucks, the sit quietly instead of go explore, the you're so pretty instead of you're so smart. She's not saying biology doesn't matter. She's saying that what we call feminine, being gentle, emotional, passive, nurturing, appearance-focused, none of that comes from having 2 X chromosomes. It comes from thousands of daily lessons about how girls are supposed to behave. No little girl is born more fearful than a little boy. Culture teaches her that bravery doesn't look good on women. No little girl is born more concerned about her appearance than a little boy. Culture teaches her that her value lies in how she looks. No little girl is born more passive than a little boy. Culture teaches her that quiet girls are prettier girls. And when that little girl grows up to be emotionally vulnerable, submissive, and obsessed with her appearance, everyone applauds and says, "Look, there's a real woman." But who created this definition of womanhood? Who wrote the rules? Throughout history, it's been powerful men, rulers, religious leaders, scientists, philosophers, who have defined what a woman should be. And surprise, surprise, their definitions do not always seem to serve their interests. Be beautiful for the male gaze, cook for your man, clean the house, raise the children. Even if you don't marry or have kids, you'll still be expected to care for your aging parents and maybe your brothers, too. Now, let me be crystal clear about something. Simone wasn't saying these activities are bad. There's nothing wrong with cooking, cleaning, caring for children, or wanting to look good. The problem is when culture tells us these obligations automatically belong to women. If a woman, fully conscious of her freedom and possibilities, chooses to marry, have children, care for the home, and cook for her partner, fantastic. Simone would applaud that choice. The problem is with women who don't realize they have a choice at all. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but men are oppressed by culture too. And you're absolutely right. The culture created by powerful men oppresses plenty of other men who don't have that power. But Simone argued that women's oppression was different for 2 crucial reasons. First, women weren't united. When we talk about the Jewish community, the black community, or the working class, we see groups that come together to fight for their rights. But in Simone's time, women weren't organized. They had just gotten the right to vote, but they still couldn't open their own bank accounts. Married women couldn't work without their husband's permission. Birth control was illegal. Why weren't women fighting back together? Because, and this is the second reason, Women were too connected to men. A Jewish person doesn't share a home with a Nazi. A worker doesn't live with the boss. But women live with their fathers, brothers, and husbands. These emotional bonds made it harder to see their own oppression clearly. A wealthy woman often felt more connected to a wealthy man than to a working-class woman. The oppression was invisible because it was intimate. But here's the part that made Simone's ideas truly controversial. She argued that some women were complicit in their own oppression. Listen to what she wrote. To refuse to be man's partner would be for women to renounce all the advantages an alliance with the superior caste can confer on them. The sovereign man will protect her materially and will undertake to justify her existence. Along with the economic risk, she avoids the metaphysical risk of a freedom that must invent its own goals without assistance. In other words, some women choose the cage because it's comfortable. If I'm not a mother, if I'm not a wife, if I'm not a sex object, then what am I? You know what? Maybe I won't complicate my life. Maybe I'll just do what's expected of me. I'll sacrifice my consciousness of freedom in exchange for comfort. This is harsh, but it's also honest. Freedom is scary. Creating your own purpose is hard work. Sometimes it's easier to let someone else tell you who to be. Simone identified the myths that shape women's lives from cradle to grave. In childhood, girls learn the myth of the eternal feminine, that all women naturally possess sweetness, calmness, cleanliness, and order. While boys are encouraged to run, jump, and explore, girls are asked to sit still, not sweat, not get dirty. Boys get balls, girls get dolls, and toy kitchens to prepare them for their future roles. Boys hear stories of superhero adventures. Girls hear stories of princesses waiting patiently for Prince Charming. Girls aren't praised for their speed, strength, or courage. They're praised for their beauty. They're told they're little dolls. And they quickly learn that their primary value lies in how they look. In adolescence, girls face an impossible tension. Their bodies become objects of male desire, but they're also expected to remain pure and chaste. They can have romantic interests, but they must never make the first move. That would make them forward or inappropriate. Like the princesses in their childhood stories, they must wait passively for the attention of their desired one. In adulthood, women face pressure to conform to the myths of wife and mother. Those who choose not to marry or have children better become nuns, because otherwise society will label them as defective for not following the natural path. This is when women face the greatest internal conflict between what they want for their lives and what society expects from them. And finally, in old age, women stop participating in many of the myths that once defined them. They're no longer valued for their sexual or reproductive capacity. This removes some pressure, but also makes them invisible in a society that valued them primarily for their youth, beauty, and ability to reproduce. So after describing all these problems, what did Simone propose? How can women escape this oppression? Her answer was revolutionary in its simplicity. Work and organize. First, work. Any woman who wants to be free must learn to earn her own money. As long as a woman depends economically on someone else, her freedom will be compromised. But Simone wasn't naive. She knew that working women don't automatically escape the traditional feminine world. A married woman with children who works outside the home will still be expected to come home and clean, cook, wash, and iron. Again, there's nothing wrong with these activities. Someone has to do them. What's wrong is that these same expectations aren't placed on men. So work alone isn't enough. Women also need to engage in political activism with other women. They need to fight for real cultural change. Political activism for public childcare. Political activism for access to sexual education and birth control. Political activism for equal opportunities for men and women. Political activism so that men and women can live harmoniously without subordination or oppression of any kind. Work and political activism. That's Simone's formula for women to live freer lives. You might be thinking, this is all very interesting, but that was 75 years ago. Haven't we solved these problems? Look around. In 2025, we're still debating whether women should have control over their own reproductive choices. We're still asking why there aren't more women CEOs, while simultaneously judging working mothers for not being home enough. We're still telling boys that crying makes them weak, and girls that being angry makes them unfeminine. The myths have updated their software, but they're running the same basic program. Social media has created new pressures around feminine beauty and masculine success. Dating apps reduce people to swipeable images based on appearance. Influencer culture sells us updated versions of the same old gender roles, just with better lighting and higher production values. And here's what's really fascinating. Simone's ideas don't just apply to women. Her core insight, that we become who we are through cultural learning rather than biological destiny, applies to everyone. Men, too, are told from birth how to perform masculinity. Don't cry. Be strong. Provide. Compete. Win. These aren't natural male traits. They're learned behaviors that serve particular cultural purposes. This brings us to Simone's ultimate message. And it's not just about gender, it's about human freedom itself. We are all born into a world that immediately begins telling us who we should be. Our families, schools, religions, governments, and media outlets all have opinions about how we should live. They create elaborate stories about what's natural, what's normal, what's right. But here's the secret that Simone discovered. You don't have to believe those stories. You can examine them, question them, and choose which ones serve your authentic self and which ones serve someone else's agenda. This doesn't mean rejecting everything society offers. It means developing the critical thinking skills to distinguish between helpful social norms and oppressive cultural programming. It means recognizing the difference between choosing a traditional path because it genuinely aligns with your values and following a traditional path because you've never considered alternatives. Freedom isn't free. It requires courage. The courage to disappoint people who expect you to be someone you're not. The courage to face uncertainty when you leave the beaten path. The courage to take responsibility for your choices instead of blaming others for your circumstances. But here's what Simone understood that many people miss. This courage isn't just for your own benefit. When you live authentically, you give others permission to do the same. When you refuse to play roles that don't fit, you create space for others to step out of their ill-fitting costumes too. When a woman chooses career over motherhood without apologizing, she makes it easier for the next woman to make that choice. When a man chooses emotional vulnerability over stoic strength, he makes it safer for other men to access their feelings. Individual liberation contributes to collective liberation. Simone de Beauvoir didn't have all the answers. Her work was groundbreaking, but also reflected the limitations of her time and social position. She was a white, educated European woman, writing primarily about the experiences of women, like herself. Today's feminists have expanded her insights to include the experiences of women of color, working-class women, LGBTQ+ individuals, and people from different cultural backgrounds. They've shown us how gender intersects with race, class, sexuality, and other aspects of identity. But the core insight remains revolutionary. We are not prisoners of our biology. We have the power to examine, question, and reshape the cultural stories that define us. So here's my challenge to you, and it's the same challenge Simone de Beauvoir posed to her readers decades ago. Look at your own life. What roles are you playing that you never consciously chose? What expectations are you meeting that don't actually serve your authentic self? What dreams have you abandoned because someone told you they weren't appropriate for someone like you? If you're a man, what aspects of your personality or interests do others consider feminine? Have you hidden these parts of yourself to fit masculine expectations? If you're a woman, what aspects of your personality or interests do others consider masculine? Have you downplayed these qualities to appear more traditionally feminine? What would change if you gave yourself permission to be fully human instead of a performance of gender? Here's what happens when people start living authentically. It creates ripples. Your courage inspires others. Your authenticity gives others permission to be real. Your refusal to play limiting roles expands possibilities for everyone. Imagine a world where children are encouraged to develop all aspects of their humanity, their strength and their tenderness, their ambition and their compassion, their independence and their capacity for connection. Imagine a world where adults choose their paths based on their genuine interests and values, rather than outdated gender scripts. Imagine relationships where people connect as full human beings, rather than complementary role players. This isn't just about women's liberation or men's liberation. It's about human liberation. Simone de Beauvoir's revolution isn't over. Every day, people around the world are still fighting for the right to define themselves. They're still pushing back against cultures that want to limit their possibilities based on their gender, race, sexuality, or other aspects of their identity. The tools of oppression have evolved, but so have the tools of liberation. Social media can spread limiting stereotypes, but it can also connect people across traditional boundaries. Global communication can homogenize culture, but it can also share diverse perspectives and possibilities. The conversation that Simone started in 1949 continues in boardrooms and classrooms, in families and friend groups, in legislation and literature. You are part of this story. Whether you realize it or not, your choices about how to live your life are political acts. When you conform to limiting expectations, you reinforce them. When you live authentically, you challenge them. You don't have to become an activist or write philosophical treatises. You just have to be willing to examine your own assumptions and make conscious choices about who you want to be. You have to be willing to feel the anxiety that Simone talked about, the discomfort that comes with freedom. You have to be willing to create your own meaning instead of accepting someone else's definition of your purpose. And here's the beautiful part. This responsibility isn't a burden. It's a gift. It's the gift of being human in the fullest sense. It's the gift of consciousness, choice, and possibility. Yes, it's scary to leave the safety of prescribed roles. Yes, it's uncomfortable to face the uncertainty of freedom. But it's also exhilarating to discover who you really are beneath all the cultural programming. It's liberating to realize that you don't have to be what others expect you to be. You get it to choose. Simone de Beauvoir died in 1986, but her ideas live on in every person who refuses to be limited by others' expectations. They live on in every child who's encouraged to be fully themselves. They live on in every relationship based on mutual respect rather than traditional roles. They live on in you, if you choose to embrace them. Remember her words. One is not born, but rather becomes a woman, or a man for that matter. We become who we are through countless choices, conscious and unconscious. The question is, will you make those choices deliberately, or will you let others make them for you? So here's what I'm asking you to do. Go home tonight and ask yourself some hard questions. Look in the mirror and ask, who am I beneath all the roles I play? What do I really want from this one precious life I've been given? What would I do if I weren't afraid of what others might think? And then, here's the crucial part. Start making choices based on your authentic answers to those questions. Start small if you need to. Wear the color you love, even if someone said it's not for you. Pursue the hobby that interests you, even if it's not traditionally associated with your gender. Speak up when someone makes assumptions about what you should want or how you should behave. And remember, you're not just liberating yourself. You're contributing to a world where everyone has the freedom to be fully human. 75 years ago, a woman walking the streets of Paris had the courage to say that everything we thought we knew about gender was wrong. She faced ridicule, criticism, and resistance, but she planted seeds that grew into a global movement for human freedom. Today, those seeds are still growing. They're growing in boardrooms where women are breaking glass ceilings. They're growing in homes where fathers are changing diapers and mothers are building businesses. They're growing in schools where children are learning that their possibilities aren't limited by their gender. But most importantly, they're growing in the choices you make every single day about who you want to be and how you want to live. Simone de Beauvoir showed us that we are not born into fixed roles. We become who we are through our choices. So choose consciously. Choose courageously. Choose authentically. Choose freedom. The revolution continues. And it continues with you. If this resonated with you, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And subscribe for more ideas that challenge the status quo. In the comments, tell me, what trait do you have that others consider wrong for your gender? Let's prove Simone's point together. Thank you.